with which most individuals would agree is worth striving. Such an achievement would likely solve many problems that humankind confronts on a global basis. Examples of these problems include domestic abuse, avoidable enmities, some mental illnesses, crimes, wars, genocide, and others. Attaining benevolent mindfulness is a key result of any process leading to mature, healthy character development. At the same time, avoidance of insults that lead to selfish, malevolent behaviors is critical.
Sir, we cannot see your slide. Means
it says you are sharing screen.
Yep.
You can't see my slides?
We can see your slide, but we can only see your first page.
Oh yeah, it isn't time for the second page yet. Yeah, it's coming up.
Okay.
So attaining benevolent mindfulness is a key result of any process leading to mature, healthy character development. At the same time, avoidance of insults that lead to selfish, malevolent behaviors is critical if human potential is to be optimized. This paper is meant to provide a roadmap to the process of fostering child development so that virtuous, helping behaviors are the rule and vices actively avoided. Slides are not changing for some reason. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to start with authoritative parenting. Experts generally agree that authoritative parenting is critical to the healthy mental development of children. With this type of parenting, confrontation with responsiveness characterizes the approach to discipline. Confrontation involves identifying and counseling regarding misbehavior. At the same time, recognition and management of stress associated with misbehavior and certain life events is regularly attended to in order to prevent long-lasting adverse mental sequelae. Shaming, coercion, intimidation, and corporal punishment are not utilized as they are in authoritarian parenting. This is to avoid the toxic stress that is a product of preventable adverse childhood experiences. With authoritative parenting, the communication set up between parent and child leads to healthy interpersonal attunement that serves developmental progress. Unfortunately, authoritarian parenting often is passed from generation to generation. Adverse sequelae, including mental illness and violent behaviors, are often seen. For this reason, an active effort to break the cycle of authoritarian parenting and teach authoritative parenting is vital. This effort may start while couples are attending prenatal education classes. In societies where authoritative parenting is not the rule, a child development team may be organized to promote desirable parenting practices. Lastly, permissive and uninvolved parenting also need to be avoided due to the lack of direction for desired behaviors associated with these parenting types. Now, with authoritative parenting, reciprocal communication between parent and child is established. In the newborn, this begins with en face or eye-to-eye contact, especially during feedings. Later, it may involve reciprocal smiling, singing, talking lovingly to the infant, and play activities before elementary communication with language is possible. The interpersonal attunement that develops describes how caretaker and child are responsive to one another's emotional needs, thoughts, and moods. When well developed, this interpersonal neurobiology involves a resonance where the thoughts, needs, and feelings of the other are regularly appreciated. Appropriate responses are often the result of such attunement and lead to the strengthening of the bond between caretaker and child. Now, imprinting describes a situation where a young animal comes to recognize another animal, person, or thing as a parent or other object of habitual trust, often shortly after birth. In humans, we usually use the term attachment to describe the trusting relationship that develops between child and caregiver. This trusting relationship strengthens over a period of months to years due to ongoing interpersonal attunement, with caregivers being responsive to the child's needs. In order for attachment to be successful, an initial bonding of love and tenderness the caregiver feels for the infant needs to occur. As Andrea Hollingsworth has stated, over time, secure, attuned attachments with other persons may enable us to love more and fear less, rendering us progressively more capable of sharing in the suffering of others and increasing the likelihood that we will take action to alleviate their misery. It is these secure attachments that allow caregivers, teachers, and mentors to influence the child's developing mindfulness or intrapersonal attunement. Now, intrapersonal attunement or mindfulness involves noticing and respecting oneself. It refers to a self-regulation of attention where one pays attention to the events of the moment. This process requires an orientation to learn values represented in the cortical areas of the brain. Intrapersonal attunement enhances the capacity for emotional empathy if certain values related to a particular circumstance are internalized. It is clearly necessary to provide a moral learning process that will enhance emotional empathy and serve as the impetus for helping behaviors. Developing a moral compass should insulate persons from blindly following a group who are caught up in inadvisable behaviors. Thus, moral learning should provide protection from de-individuation, so characteristic of authoritarian societies. Now, moral learning can be transmitted in a number of ways. Basically, the exercises involve either classical or operant conditioning. Every effort should be made to eliminate the corporal punishment and shaming that are commonly used by some, quote, educators in certain situations. Such reinforcement often results in repressed fear and anger that serve as a well of energy waiting to be discharged on targets that may be established by false narratives. Moral learning is taught by either dilemma ethics or plain moral facts, with several vehicles commonly used for such teaching. These vehicles include the modeling of caring behaviors, reading stories with a moral, and human relation programs for children. Moral decision-making that results from such learning becomes emotional, intuitive, and automatic when dealing with a familiar issue. Alternatively, decision-making may involve conscious, controlled reasoning based on prior or new learning when an unfamiliar moral issue is encountered. Now, Samuel and Pearl Oliner's studies published as the altruistic personality found that parents who modeled caring behaviors inside and outside the family were more likely to have children who would take significant risks to help others. Specific suggestions and techniques for modeling desirable behaviors are available through a number of sources. At healthychildren.org, suggestions include pointing out sharing among adults, showing ways to calm down, teaching children to express their feelings, and pay attention to good behavior. At klaschools.com, suggestions for modeling involve doing good deeds, being patient in lines, respecting others and their property, and being a good loser. Other sites also include constructive ideas. Now, Literacy is key to all learning. Early vocabulary growth comes with parents speaking frequently with their children. Brain growth is impaired when less words are spoken to children. The 0 to 3 program and others provide parents ideas for nurturing thinking and language skills. Unfortunately, across the United States of America, less than 50% of children are read to daily by parents. The Head Start program in the United States provides a vehicle for disadvantaged children to, quote, catch up. However, the program is inadequately funded and staffed to serve all of the many children in need. This lack of learning and impaired literacy in the early years may hinder the attempt to transmit plain moral facts through reading and telling stories. That is why promoting early literacy has the potential of enhancing the moral and social emotional development of children. There are many resources that caregivers and schools may use to promote moral learning as children mature. For the lessons to be appreciated and internalized, it is obvious that comprehension is mandatory. Now, individual differences and experience in human relations for children is an example of a compendium that outlines exercises at various grade levels to sensitize children to appropriate interaction with others. Multiple goals of the exercises including furthering self-esteem, supporting virtues and avoiding vices, controlling emotions, awareness of human similarities, and respect for individual differences. A number of recent resources are available to teach respectful human relations. Many school systems do an excellent job in this area. However, it should be emphasized that there is a degree of moral entrepreneurship in all these programs. Such moral entrepreneurship involves expressing an opinion as to what is virtuous behavior and what behaviors should be avoided, example, vices. In this regard, virtues are defined as those traits of character that blunt mere self-interest, so that one can see and actively promote the interests of others. In contradistinction, vices represent those traits of character that unleash mere self-interest, so that one fails or ignores to see the interests of others. Certain cultures may vary somewhat in their concepts of virtues and vices. Teaching and agreeing on plain moral facts should be achievable. Now, false narratives have classically been a vehicle by which societies have attempted to direct members to accomplish their own selfish purposes. Such false narratives may distort history, promote false beliefs, and propagate negative feelings towards ethnic and racial groups for political purposes. It is anticipated that healthy psychosocial development that includes authoritative parenting and moral learning will shield persons from internalizing these false narratives and contribute to resilience in stressful times. Higher levels of literacy developed through the educational process should further facilitate the process of, quote, reading between the lines. There are communication skills that include attentive learning, assertive statements, and clear opinions that are essential to the process of nonviolent conflict resolution. Human relations programs for children should provide the basis for the objective thinking required to reduce enmities that have developed. Now, emotional empathy refers to the vicarious sharing of emotions. The ability to feel the emotional states of others is based on the quality of interpersonal and intrapersonal attunement experienced during development. Dr. Helen Reese has developed the concepts of empathic concern and empathic capacity. It is secure, attuned attachment, model behaviors, reading stories with a moral, and human relations program for children that contribute to enhancing emotional empathy. Unfortunately, interpersonal relationships marked by conflict, insecurity, and distrust can cause us to feel threatened, emotionally deregulated, and closed off to empathetic connection with others. There are many examples where recurrent maltreatment in children that results in fear and anger produces stifling of emotional empathy. The presence of cognitive empathy, the ability to mentalize without emotional empathy, is characteristic of psychopathy, where ruthless persons use others as objects to satisfy their own selfish needs. Now, emotional empathy allows one to feel the suffering of others. Moral learning creates the impetus to care about such suffering. The result of feeling one's suffering and caring about it is the desire to relieve the discomfort. That desire we define as compassion. It is compassion that leads to helping behaviors that ultimately relieve the suffering. The propensity to work towards helping behaviors is clearly dependent on the quality of experiences during psychosocial development. In conclusion, it is clear that optimizing psychosocial development is not a simple endeavor. If we are to achieve parenting for a peaceful world, significant initiatives are in order. Parenting orientation prenatally has been shown to be effective. Pediatricians can provide ongoing support to children and parents in the office if their services are readily available to all. Certain genetically transmitted conditions, mental disorders, congenital problems, and injuries require ongoing medical and community resources for the best possible outcome. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child could provide a vehicle to further developmental education globally. There is much work to be done as the child advances through the school system. That work includes contribution from teachers, theologians, pediatricians, political leaders, and other community members who serve as role models for civility and responsible behavior. Indeed, it takes a village if psychosocial development of children is to be optimized. For progress to be made, countries need to provide the person power and financial resources to facilitate traversing the steps outlined in the flowchart of benevolent mindfulness that we will see in a minute. Prioritizing efforts to achieve such progress is a challenge for all societies. I wanted to first show the slide for benevolent mindfulness. We actually start with authoritative parenting. You can see it up in the upper right. With the interpersonal attunement, secure attachment develops, and then intrapersonal attunement is facilitated through modeling of caring behaviors, reading stories with a moral, human relations programs for children. And this secure attachment and the intrapersonal attunement results in first emotional empathy, and then the ability and the desire to have compassion for those who are in difficulty, and this results in helping behaviors. Very importantly, the human relations programs for children with the background of the moral development and enhanced literacy results in the possibility for resistance to false narratives, and also results in a proclivity to nonviolent conflict resolution. What we want to prevent is malevolent mindfulness, and this is a little bit cut off in my slide too, but it starts with authoritarian parenting. And with the corporal punishment and the shaming, we see toxic stress, which results in repressed fear and anger, which serve as a well of energy for later expression in possibly a violent way. Also, because the child is continually striving to avoid the insults, emotional empathy is impaired, so there's a stifling of emotional empathy. With permissive or uninvolved parenting in the presence of an authoritarian culture, this stifling of emotional empathy is also possible. In an authoritarian culture, often there is group targeting via false narratives. There may be reinforcement of these false narratives through repetition and possible coercion. Again, this false targeting results in hatred based on these false narratives and may eventually result in violence. The term de-individuation, which you see on the left here, is a result of there not being that moral compass, and therefore the child is going to, or the adult at this time, is going to follow whatever the group is going to do, rather than using that moral compass to prevent inadvisable behaviors. So that is a summary of psychosocial development, hopefully developing into benevolent mindfulness as opposed to malevolent mindfulness. This presentation has been published, and I will be happy to share the paper with conference attendees, and I will send the paper to the conference coordinator. Thank you very much for your attention, and I would accept any questions if there are any.
If is there any question you need to ask, you can ask from Dr. Doctor, I must say that was very excellent presentation, very informative presentation. You taught us that we need to focus on these aspects also, how child development is very important for our society. We need to focus on few kind of things like intrapersonal, interpersonal relationship bonds with our child, so that their brain development, their child development, overall growth can take place in a nourishment form. And rest, whatever information you have propagated other than the slide, that was also wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your time you have given. Thank you. That was very informative presentation for us.
You're entirely welcome, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you, sir. So now, our next participant is Miss Nadia Yar. She is from American University of Antigua and Barbuda. So